Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Reasons and Resources. And in this episode, as you can see from what I've got up here, we're going to be looking at the K programming language. Now I must admit, out of all the languages I've spoken about in this series, this is probably the one that I have the least knowledge of. And in actual fact, prior to sort of preparing for this episode, I suppose I didn't even know it existed. I suppose the first time I probably became aware of it was reading one of the books. Currently sort of working my way through at the moment, Programming Language Explorations. And there's a section in there, just a small section, where it references K. And so what I've been doing in this series is, I've been roughly running through the order of these episodes in the order in which they appear in that book and are referenced. So we're now up to this language K. And as I started to research it enough to do this episode and enough to point people in the right direction for resources so they can then, develop their own ideas about the language and play around with it and see if there's anything in the language that they might find useful. It made me think, I suppose, about the whole, concept of arrays and how in certain languages the manipulation of arrays can be implemented in such a way so that you have these operations which can apply to an entire set of values at once. Now, obviously, through looking at multiple different languages over time, that's something I've been aware of, obviously, but it's not something I think I've ever consciously looked at slicing across languages simultaneously. And so it's sort of opened up this view on the world, or view on programming, or way of thinking about things that maybe I didn't slice that way before. So yeah, I'm looking forward at some point after I've put out this episode to, dig deeper and look at, compare and contrast the different ways in which arrays are implemented in different languages. Sometimes you get a situation where there's a naming difference, but it's essentially the same beast under the bonnet. But I think here the specific interest is this ability in a language, not just that it can handle arrays, because most languages have something that handles arrays or something that you could say, oh yeah, that's array-like. But it's this idea of being able to apply operations across an entire set of values at once. And you can see here there's a list of sort of languages in this Wikipedia article and the ways in which that might be done. There's this MAT statement. I don't know if I've ever used that in BASIC actually, which is interesting. So yeah, I'm looking forward to just again exploring a slightly different paradigm, different view on the programming world. I'll include links, as I always do, to the Wikipedia articles and everything else that's relevant in this episode, and I'll put them in the descriptions. It will be no surprise to note that it doesn't really feature, I don't think, at all in any of these most popular technology lists or admired and desired or top paying technologies, because it's pretty specialized. If you look at actually what it is, so it's proprietary language commercialized by KX Systems, and we'll have a look at the website in a moment where you can sort of go out from there, and you can see, as is referenced here, very much used for financial applications and handling large set of time series data. So, big banks, that sort of thing. So that leads into, like, what sort of reasons might somebody want to learn K beyond, as I've already said, my reason for learning it is going to be more of a curiosity about how array programming language and expressions manifest themselves in different languages, and how this might be different from, say, something else that does a similar thing. So, what sort of things? Well, one is tied to that, I suppose, is, if it's able to do complex array manipulations, matrix manipulations, then you're going to see some quite extreme performance and efficiency gains through that. So, you're going to learn a lot about, how it would enable you to write incredibly fast and efficient code. Also tied in with that, and if you've looked at other languages which have array features in them, you probably have noticed that they can be quite concise in the way that the syntax is sort of expressed and laid out. The other thing is there might be a domain-specific reason, because you're interested in working in finance or data analysis, and you're just interested in seeing like what's out there, what's on the landscape. Maybe you've done a bit of Python, a bit of R, a bit of Julia, messed about with Jupyter Notebooks and a few other things, and you're looking to see, are there any specialized proprietary languages out there that might be also useful taking a look at. So K would be a good example of that. And again, as with a lot of these, there is that challenge of learning a completely new, unique syntax and way of thinking, and also the challenge you get and the stimulation you get from having a paradigm shift in programming. So, with all of that in mind, I'm going to just point you into some sort of general resources, and then you can knock yourself out and go down various rabbit holes. It does seem to me as well that definitely taking a look at APL, which was a previous episode I did. Oh, sorry, not the previous one before. So we did APL, Prologue, and then K. I would say it might be actually helpful to look at some of the concepts in APL to sort of soften yourself up, so to speak. Okay, so there is the, and I think I've highlighted this before, there is the Journal of the British APL Association, and in there they actually have an entry for the K language in their archive. So it gives you a sort of, bit of, if you just want a bit of an overview here, it's quite a nice one there. Then we have another overview for K there, if you're just trying to get a bit of a, just to dip your toe a little bit. And this has sort of quite a number of useful links, although be careful, because a number of these you can see are on Web Archive. I've not tested all the links, so yeah. And then we've actually got the KX website, the commercial website, so you might want to dig through there, see what sort of resources are available. Obviously some of this is going to be behind a trial or a demo or whatever, but I'm sure you can be creative and, you know, glean what you need from this in combination with some of the other available sort of resources that are out there. There's actually quite an interesting developer section here as well. So you can sort of go as deep as you can go, pretty deep through this without actually having to book a demo or organise a free trial if you're just looking for literature information to sort of read around the subject. And then we have this this Kona. So it's an open source implementation of K. I believe is it K3, I think, if I'm right there. But yeah, there's some, you know, information, literature links there that can set you off down the open source implementation. And you can see that you've got there's the Q for mortals and the K2 user manual, reference manual. Again, these are squirreled away on the Wayback Machine. There you go, there's a manual there. So there's lots of stuff, you know, floating around. It's a bit about map reduce, if that's your thing. So yeah, Kona. I believe there's a REPL in there. You can sort of play around on a REPL if you download and install the software. And you might find there's all these sort of implementations. So we've got OK implementation of K6. And you can go on and, oh, account has been suspended. Yeah, so again, some of these might be dead links. But it's interesting to see, I think, how a commercial concern like proprietary language may have implementations of it that exist outside of that. So, and, you know, pursuing those, you might find that certain ones don't necessarily exist anymore, but it can be an interesting journey, and you can learn quite a bit on, you know, as part of that, and fill in the blanks a little bit. So there's under the OK GitHub here, GitHub page, you'll see there's a section on programming K as well. It's nice when it's like this because you've got useful snippets of code that you can feed into whatever, you know, IDE you're using, or you choose to use, whichever route you go down. What I try and do in these series is I don't, you know, necessarily force people to go in a certain direction in their, you know, in terms of what IDEs to use. I'm just sort of pointing you in the general direction of resources as starting points. But I'd often, if I can, try and find some sort of online REPL so you can play around. Well, there is an online implementation here of OK that you can sort of play around with if you don't want to install anything. LearnX in Y minutes does have a page for KDB, and you'll notice as well you get these sort of, I don't know if they're used interchangeably, but obviously you've got KX Systems, which is a privately owned software company, and then you get K and then KDB Plus, which is that's the sort of database, but it's all, I think it's all integrated into that. And you have the Q language as well. Q is a descendant of APL, and so you'll see, you know, sometimes it'll mention K, sometimes you'll see KDB, sometimes you'll see Q mentions, but I think there's also yeah, so there you can see Q and KDB are virtually interchangeable. It gets a bit confusing because I think there is also another language, isn't there, called Q, which is to do with quantum computing. So that's the only problem you've got there. But again, there's some nice sections of code here that you can sort of play around with, use to kick the tires. This is a really useful resource if you've never used it, if you just want stuff to play around with on a REPL. On here, and you can see they've sort of listed in the comments the sort of outputs to expect. Now, obviously, depending on what implementation you're using, you may find you might have to tweak some of the code. I did find online, or sorry, on YouTube, there is a KX channel. If you just want to watch some videos, if that's your thing. And surprise, surprise, yeah, it's not. I've not got around to actually writing anything about K on the Programming Polyglot website. It's in the works, like I said on a previous video. Had a good run. Got up to our goal, and then things got a little bit sticky around here. Prologue was great. IO was I've still got to just tweak some bits on IO to do with actors and things like concurrency and stuff like that. But I decided to put what I did have up anyway. Perl, R, standard ML, OCaml. So everything that's underlined has a corresponding page too. But I decided to sort of power through and do some things ahead anyway, but also just power through and try and do the ones I could do, like do the low-hanging fruit, the ones that I had sufficient knowledge to be able to sort of quality control code from LLMs and other resources and properly test it. So I think, I can't remember what's next on my list. I've sort of jumped over some of these. I will get around to doing PHP at some point. I have actually done that before, quite a lot of PHP back in the day, but I need to bring myself up to speed a little bit on that before I attempt that. So I thought I might do maybe fourth next, and then jump back to Factor or vice versa. So anyway, that's where I am with that. But yeah, no K at the moment. So we go. Hopefully that was useful and pushed you right in the right direction. Unfortunately, like I was open about this at the start, it's not a language I've been at all familiar with until very recently, but it was good because I think I found sufficient and relevant resources for anybody that is interested in checking it out to at least get themselves underway. So thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in a future episode.